Just one more reading. The Great Treatise on Stages of Path to Enlightenment, Volume 3. Thinking of this, the Buddha said in the Perfection of Reason Sutras that you are meditating on signs of true existence, whether you meditate upon forms as permanent or impermanent, as blissful or painful, as having self or not having self. Ignorance superimposes intrinsic nature on things, for you to use reason to overcome its perspective, yet not to refute conventional objects. This is a contradiction, because Cutler, commentary on the Middle Way, says, the sage said that because ignorance obscures the nature of phenomena, it is a conciliar, cum redzop san virti. The fabrication that he perceives as true are called truths for a conciliar. Cum redzop den pa san virti satya. Those Cutler say that forms, sounds, and so forth are posited as conventional truths. Cum redzop den pa san virti satya, through the force of ignorance. There is no fault here when we posit things such as forms and sounds as conventional truths. Truth means that they are true through the force of particular thought. Since that the thought must be considered a conception of two existing forms, sounds, and so forth, are truths from the ignorance that imposes intrinsic existence on them. Therefore, Cutler refers to the two types of arhats who have eliminated afflicted ignorance and to the bodhisattvas on the 80th level of above when he says, they see these appearances as fabrications and not as true because they do not have an exaggerating conception of true existence. For this reason, Cutler says that for those who do not have the conception of true existence, forms and so forth are mere conventionalities. Therefore, the truth of forms, sound, and such is posited in the perspective of ignorance. But ignorance does not posit things such as forms and sounds. For example, from the perspective of wrong consciousness that apprehends a rope, a snake, the rope is a snake, but this wrong consciousness does not posit rope. Since the mind that posits things like form and sound are the six unimpaired consciousness associated with the eye, etc., the objects they establish do not exist conventionally, and thus reason do not refute them. However, even conventionally they do not exist as ignorance apprehends them. This is because ignorance superimposes an essential or intrinsic nature on things, and this intrinsic nature does not exist even conventionally. Therefore, reason conventionally refutes what ignorance apprehends. If it did not, then you could not prove that at the conventional level things are like illusions. Ignorance superimposes intrinsic nature on things. From these, attachment, hostility, and so forth arise, further superimposing features such as attractiveness or unattractiveness upon that intrinsic nature. Therefore, reason can also be used to eradicate the way that attachment and such apprehends objects. Cutler commentary on the 400 stanza says, attachment so forth superimposes features such as attractiveness and unattractiveness only upon the intrinsic nature of things that ignorance has superimposed. Therefore, they do not work apart from ignorance, they depend upon ignorance. This is because ignorance is the main affliction. These are the innate afflictions that have operated from beginningless times. However, because reason can eradicate the way that they apprehend things, they referent objects not exist even conventionally. Therefore, objects of innate minds are of the two types, those that reason can refute and those that reason cannot refute. The objects of innate conventional valid cognitions that posit things like form and sound do exist conventionally, hence reason does not refute them. Accordingly, since we refute essential or intrinsic existence even conventionally in the system of the master Buddha Palita and Cutler, it seems to be very difficult to posit conventional objects. If you do not understand how to posit this well without contradiction, then you will not be fully certain about the practice and performance class. It seems that this causes most individuals to fall into an overly negative view. Therefore, intelligence should master this system's procedure for positing conventionalities. At this point, I am afraid I may have said more than enough about this. I will not elaborate any further. One more. The Great Treatise.